All right, everyone, the red light is on and we are recording. And this is Mark back for another episode of the Veteran Semi Professional. So today's an interview episode where I'm interviewing a veteran about their lives and career after the military, all in effort to help you if you maybe are still in and are trying to figure out what am I going to do once I can put my hands back in my pockets, grow my hair out, and start wearing these things called quote unquote civilian clothes. Or maybe you recently got out and you're not satisfied with that first job and are still trying to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together. This is the show for you. Okay. My job is to bring some really cool people on, talk about their personal transition, the good, bad, and the ugly, and show you some paths that are out there and how you can get started in the wide world of the open oyster that is post-military life, as far as career, business, whatever it is that you want to go do. So super pumped for today's guest. Patrick is a really awesome guy who came recommended from another guest, John Stoddard, and so really stoked to talk to him today. And as y'all know, I love bringing entrepreneurs on the show. And so Patrick's got all kinds of great stuff to talk about there. So Patrick, if you take a minute, introduce yourself, man, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Skinner, and I currently am the technical co-founder and CTO for a company called Agami Incorporated. And I did 5 years in the military. I was a paratrooper medic and mass casualty coordinator. My claim to fame, really, in my military career was the earthquake at Haiti, which was Operation Unified Response. I was the mass casualty coordinator and medic for that. And I got out, went directly into contracting, tried to find myself a little bit there, picked up some pretty solid contracts, got some really amazing experience, and then eventually got to the point where my wife and I decided to start a family, and we're like, well, I can't have a job wearing a flak vest and having a family at the same time. So I got to figure something out, and got into programming, did all my online education or did all the programming education all online. Started, tinkering, putting together some cool applications and APIs and all kinds of cool stuff. And that's really what's led me here.
Well, first question is, if I remember correctly from the first conversation you and I had together, the kind of the way you said your claim of fame was, going to Haiti, doing mass casualty coordination and everything. And if I remember correctly, it was kind of like a lark or something that like you went and took this course about coordinating mass casualty events. It wasn't like they just kind of needed a guy. It sounded like to go check this block for the battalion or whatever, and like you just drew the straw that day, and then it just like opened up a couple of doors for you later on. Am I remembering correct?
Totally. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
totally by accident. So I finished some training, and I got into 82nd Airborne. There wasn't anything really going on at the time, and they're like, "Well, you could drop a packet for some training and do this or that." And I was like, "Okay, well." Started going online, looking at the different courses and stuff available, and saw this one for mass casualty coordination. I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool. I'll do that." I was really big into medical career, medical training at that time, and I was like, "Okay, so I'll pursue that." It turns out there was like 9 people that actually completed the course in the entire military at that time. Like, not many people did it, and I was like, "Okay," and following morning, I find out that I and my unit was going, and I was like, okay, all right, this sounds interesting. We just got back off of Christmas leave. I believe it was like January 4th, January 5th when we got the call, and a couple of days later we were flying into Haiti, which was interesting because North Carolina at that time in January, you're looking at 20, 30-degree weather, in the
Right.
mornings, and then you fly in, and it is a very humid 105, 110, something like that on Port-au-Prince. So yeah, that's talk about instant shock. There's no transition for that.
Oh man, that's wild. That's wild. And I'm sure this was just I I'm imagining you at this point. I mean, you're like, specialist Sergeant Skinner, and they're like, "Hey man, like you're the guy today. We need you to like coordinate this whole thing." And you're just like, "I took this online course a couple months ago." That's just a wild story. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting point because my platoon, we landed at Haiti and we got divvied out. Everybody was going to kind of different sections and stuff like that. So my platoon kind of talked about what we were going to do, and then the company altogether ended up going to this university hospital right behind the president's house. And I'll never forget because we just got thrown into the mix, and try to save a lot of the graphic pieces to it, but there were just thousands and thousands of bodies that we just had to deal with,
Yeah.
and somehow, some way, and talk about just an eye-opening situation. And so you got thousands of just human bodies that you had to figure out what to do with, and then on top of that, you had other thousands of human beings that need help immediately.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, I get a lot of people turning to me, and I'm freshly 22 years old, something like that, as a specialist. And they're like, okay, what do we do in this situation? And I'm like, oh my, okay, all right, let's do this. And so we had to put up tons of tents and stuff like that. We had to, figure out how we were going to take care of triaging patients and things like that. And yeah, it was 2 to 3 hours of sleep each night, and just constantly just grinding out work, getting through helping as many people as humanly possible in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, it was a wild experience, most definitely, especially when you get to that situation where you have to make that decision, where, well, if I don't do something for this person dies. But if I try to
Yeah.
do something, they might survive, and that's a hard pill to swallow. So
Yeah.
I had to get really, really creative, and that creativity, that moment of creativity, is what really spawned my creativity for a lot of the software development and everything as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, perfect. This seems like a natural segue into the next question that I was going to ask. So, you talked about, you got out, you went through kind of the contracting world for a little bit and everything. And then, the family starts coming into the picture, and, gallivanting across the globe, in war zones and everything isn't as enticing an option anymore. And you said you started, kind of self-teaching yourself and doing some online courses on programming and everything. So like, where did that originate for you? Where you're just like, hey, this is a cool thing I can take with me anywhere. Did you always kind of have an interest in doing something like that? Like how did that thought process go of, I want to start this?
Well, as a matter of fact, getting into that was really actually just solving my own problems. So the first business I ever really opened on my own was a nutrition coaching business. It was called Nutrition Nerds. Had a really cool logo, stuff like that. And one of the first things I was like, okay, how do I develop a website? This is back in 2014, 2015, and 2014. And at that time, WordPress was still pretty hot. There wasn't a whole lot of, I mean, there were some like Wix and things like that, but
Mm-hmm.
they were pretty clunky. They weren't very visually appealing. And so I was like, okay, I want to just program my own thing. How do I do that? So just going down the rabbit hole of Googling, how do I develop my own website, and how do I develop my own website with a lot of custom features on WordPress and things like that. And I ended up finding myself on a website called Team Treehouse, which I still use to this day. And it has some excellent training videos and stuff like that for all kinds of different programming languages and such. And I took that entire course, and just continued on that training on a regular basis to the point where I was a full stack front end developer, did the whole UI UX training, did a lot of the HTML, CSS, Java, and learned a lot about the front end development of software.
Okay, a few things I just want to break down for the audience here real quick. So WordPress, for everyone out there who like maybe you've heard the term WordPress before. So I believe that it powers like 70% of the web or something. That's always the stat that I hear. And so for reference here, like my website, the veteranpro.com, is built on WordPress, and that was not because I thought WordPress was the best or something. That was really just like my own stupidity of, I was like, okay, this says this is a website builder. I probably made it way harder for myself than it actually needed to be, because there's tools like Square and Wix, and I've used Tilda a couple of times, which I really like. It's just creating like a website way easier. But WordPress provides a ton of customization and flexibility. And if you have someone like Patrick who knows how to kind of work the code and everything, you can do some magical stuff with WordPress. And then
Yeah,
also,
to
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah. So to kind of highlight that too, is like, at that time, stuff like Squarespace and Wix were either non-existent or very clunky.
Right.
But in like today's situation, if you're looking for something super quick and easy, definitely trying to go with something like Squarespace or Wix. WordPress has that I like WordPress to the sense now because it has scalability. Like you
Hmm.
can go from just being a general blogger to having a full blown e-commerce website all on the same platform. Just depends on how you continue to build it. It has a lot of growth potential. So you don't have to make that jump of like, oh, I used to be a blogger, so I was on Squarespace, but then I became a blogger and I have a whole e-commerce store. So I made that jump from Squarespace to Shopify or something like that.
Right.
Shopify is being the number one e-commerce platform out there. And so yeah, it's a nice middle ground for growth, and that's where I really started to learn a lot about just coding in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. And then the last term, I think this has probably come up a couple times in the show, but can you just quickly go over front end, back end, and full stack?
Yeah, it's a great question. Front end is basically anything that's going to change, edit, or create movement, even on anything that is visual. So when I talk about HTML, I like to say HTML is very much of the bones of the structure when it comes to any type of platform, whether it could be a software application, a phone app, or even just a website. CSS is all the colors and the features and the things that make it look and designed in a certain way. It talks about like what type of typography and stuff, like what kind of font and everything you're going to use. And then Java is the feel, like what does it feel like to go through a website? Are there things that happen when you click a button? Does it look like it presses down and then comes back up? That kind of stuff. That's your Java aspect. So that's very much of like your front end side. Now your back end side is very much of how does the actual software work. So if I'm going to be on a website like let's say Uber. Okay, so all the stuff that I see where everything's being presented to me is your front end, but the actual stuff that actually makes the connection to the driver and then schedules the ride, that when I click on payment and the payment actually goes through, that actual process of that connection and everything, that's very much of your back end development.
Gotcha. Okay. And then full stack, basically people who can do like a little bit of both.
The full stack is because your full stack front end does get broken down into
Okay.
a couple different elements, but your full stack front end is somebody that can do pretty much everything from the user experience development, the user interface, the coloration, the design aspects, all that stuff, and then the actual programming. Most of the time, you have a UI UX designer, and then you have a front end programmer. So the UI UX designer will design it to look a certain way, and then the programmer will take the design and then turn that into a program. And so that's basically a front end, a full stack front end is somebody that can do both.
Okay, perfect. No, that was a great overview. Thank you. And I know there's a lot of people who, yeah, one of the more popular episodes we had on the show was with a guy by the name of Eric Huckle, who's a product manager and very popular, career field that people want to get into. And so having an understanding of terms like front end, back end, UI, UX, and everything, definitely like, you kind of want to grasp onto those early if, going to work in tech or like going to be a product manager or something you want to clue in on. You don't necessarily need to know how to do the code, but like you need to know, what the coders are doing and not look like a total idiot when you're trying to talk to them. Right. Yeah. Basic
Yeah,
idea there.
I tell people that all the time. It's like you don't have to be a full, like some sort of amazing wizard of a programmer to work in tech by any means. A lot of the times, actually, the most needed jobs are the people that can at least speak the language to the programmers and then translate that to the biz dev people, the people that understand the business side of things, and then understand, okay, here's timelines. This is what expected. This is what we're trying to execute. And these are the roadblocks that we're trying to overcome. These are the things that we're doing to overcome those roadblocks, and then getting the feedback from biz dev and taking that back to programmers and so on. So yeah, that's having that mediator is probably one of the most lucrative jobs in the tech space right now.
Yeah. And you may be listening to this wondering like, well, like, why doesn't the engineer just talk to the business person? Right. But I'm sure you might have some thoughts on this, Patrick, but like the general thing that I've kind of sensed is a lot of engineers, like they just want to sit there and code and like, they just want to
Mm-hmm.
develop or, they like want to know like what they're trying to accomplish and everything, but like they just want to, get in their corner and just code away. And damn, like you can find some really great ones that'll do that all day and everything. And then, the business people want to get about, they're all about making money, driving revenue, building something. And like you got these two people and they're two different silos, and you're just trying to be like the grain conveyor belt between the two of them, because they're each want to do their own thing and they're both really good at it, but they have to be able to talk to each other or else it's just, not accomplishing anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right on the money, because most of the time when I'm trying to get a developer to even tell me exactly what he's trying to execute, he's going to say it in the most complex way possible. and because he takes, I mean, to be perfectly honest, they take a lot of pride in what they do. So because
Right.
they take a lot of pride, they're gonna go over every single nuance of what they've done, and you've got to be able to boil that down into translatable bytes, and then take that and then stand in front of a board of biz dev people and explain to them exactly what he's trying to execute in 5 minutes or less, even though it took him an hour to tell you. And and the last thing you want is that guy standing in front of them and trying to first tell him what he's trying to do, and then have to translate what he just said. It's a nightmare every time that happens.
Okay. We've had a great last couple of minutes here of like product management 101 for everyone. So I hope you all like digest that and package it up somewhere, because that was some insightful comments for sure there. So I'm going to go back to, was it Nutrition Nerd? Was that it? Nutrition Nerds?
Yeah, Nutrition Nerds. Yeah, that was
Yeah. So
my
this was like
first
the
one.
first one you're creating is like, what spurred you into learning to code and everything. Kind of, I guess, like how did that get started, and then like what were you trying to do, like what was the plan for the business when you got going on it?
Yeah, I believe every business I think I've ever opened almost always starts with me trying to solve my own problems. And
Yeah.
so at the time I was really big into martial arts and jiu-jitsu and things like that. And I knew that one of the easiest ways to get a solid leg up is to have nutrition really on point. And
Right.
and so, and at the same time too, I had a pretty awesome medical career in the military, and I thought, well, I'm going to study something along the lines of that. So if I decide to go to med school, I have the ability to do that. So in college, I was studying biochemistry with the emphasis on dietetics, and and so when I was specifically working on my own nutrition and even my wife's nutrition, we were taking it up a notch and doing some things that were not common at the time, and we were using some really new science based on things like Lane Norton and stuff like that does. And so at that time, as we continue to talk about it, a lot more people were asking, okay, what are you doing? How are you doing it? This seems really interesting. And the more and more I talked about it, the more and more I realized, okay, I just need to start charging these people, because this is taking a lot of my own time.
Right.
So I started Nutrition Nerds, and ended up building my own website, doing a lot of blogging, things like that, and fell in love with coaching, but very quickly, rather quickly, the business lasted less than a year, just because I learned to hate the industry. And so the industry very much is driven on selling a product, selling courses, and selling things that, to be perfectly honest, I morally didn't believe in, because they just didn't necessarily fit my style of nutrition. I wanted to be able to sit there, be able to talk to people and educate them on what they needed to do, rather than just shove a bunch of supplements and stuff down their throat and
Right.
get a monthly revenue off of that. I didn't want that. And so as quickly as that business grew, is about as quickly as it came apart.
I think that's a really great lesson to learn for anybody in starting something. Like you can have something where you can be making great money. It can be a great business just strictly from like a financial sense. But if you're not feeling authentic in it, you're not going to be able to sustain it over the long term. And it's also just like, why waste your time on something that's like that? Okay. So one of my very first, I acquired a very small business that made custom pet keychains. Okay. This is like super. So basically, what people did, they would send in a picture, and then basically I shared that with a manufacturer. He would, kind of die cast the picture and make a little keychain out of it. Okay. All right. Here's the catch with that though. The kind of people who go online to order custom pet keychains like that, they're Karens. All right. And I quickly realized I didn't like dealing with Karens and I hated the customer service and was like, I don't give a shit if this business can make money. I don't want to do it because it just sucks the life out of me. And so I got it. And then like a month later, I was like, yeah, I'm done, man. I'm not doing this anymore. So it's a really important thing about whether it be like starting a business or even just a career or something. Think about how this is going to work for you over the long term and if like you're being authentic to yourself. So it's a good lesson. I thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot of hard lessons and things from there. I mean, everything about that business was a great lesson for me. I mean, honestly, like filing my own LLC in the state of Texas and learning how that process works and how to pay franchise tax and how to do all of these different things. I spent so much time learning just the biz dev side and managing the business. So I mean, I like to talk about that story quite a bit because as much as the business was such a quick, it grew and then it died it was very quickly. Everything in between was something that was an amazing lesson that I took on to all my other future businesses.
Yeah, super cool. Well, Patrick, so I was planning on talking to you a little bit more about like your prior to what you're doing now, but we've just gone down some great tangents already, and so I don't want to like waste too much time on that. Um,
Yeah.
so for like everyone listening, we're kind of going to skip over a little bit of Patrick's career here because he had like a ton of great stuff between you know nutrition nerds and what he's doing now, but he's doing some really cool stuff now that I want to dig into for the crowd. Okay, so we're just going to hit fast forward on your life here real quick, and if you want to talk about your newest venture, I'd love to share it with everybody.
Yeah, right before that, I'll say that immediately after Nutrition Nerds and everything, I did work for a company called Dealer FX. They were in Series A. They were a nice tech startup out of Toronto or out of Markham, Canada. And I learned a ton about the startup world. I was employee number 98, and we were traveling all over the place. And it really spurred my interest into back end, like Python, JavaScript programming. And so I got really deep into programming at that time. And that business grew so fast, as a matter of fact, too fast. And things just the culture and things like that really corroded pretty quickly, and I got out of the business and started my own businesses. Fast forwarding now, that's how I ended up kind of getting here. I took a lot of my education about being in that Series A kind of mindset and what it's like to be in a tech startup. That I wanted to solve a problem that I've always wanted to solve, and that problem is actually tied a lot to human trafficking. The first time I ever experienced human trafficking was in Haiti. It's sad but true. A lot of people don't realize that somebody else's misfortune turns out to be a very bad person's opportunity.
Right.
And so when, the easiest time to make people disappear is during natural disasters, because you could just simply assume that they are under some rubble, buried in the water, something like that, never to be found again. And that is the easiest time to make people disappear. I witnessed that several times during my time in Haiti. And I always thought to myself, one of these days, if I can do something on the tech side that could truly combat that to some degree, I want to do that. So fast forward to 2020, where I saw some news. My current business partner sent me an article just talking about smart contracts. If you don't know what a smart contract is basically it's almost like the mediator in any type of other contract you would have, like a bank or anything like that, but it's all done on Web3 technology. And what that does for you is it just helps you mediate a specific transaction honestly. And I saw how smart contracts were being used as a certificate of authenticity or a proof of ownership of some sort of digital or even physical product. And that was my aha moment, because I had already known at that point that the counterfeit industry is a massive industry. It's currently worth $343 billion a year, and they're actually a very high consumer of human trafficking. They will use people to not only produce their goods but traffic, counterfeit goods as well. And so, reality check. A lot of people don't know this. It's very rarely talked about. But every time you buy something that could or is a could be or is a counterfeit product, you're probably investing into some sort of illicit business that also funds human trafficking or drug trafficking of any sort. And so at that point, I was like, okay, if I could put together some sort of technology that would make it or render it near or next to impossible to make products, or make counterfeit products, I could be very well cutting off the revenue source of a lot of these counterfeit businesses, and thus by cutting off the revenue source, removing their funds to even fund human trafficking of any sort. And so that me and my business partner, we dove into it starting, July of last year. Sorry, July of 2020, and we've been working at it ever since. And we came up with this idea to integrate what's called NFTs, or called non-fungible tokens, into physical products. Now, to really water that down and make it something that is very easy to understand, the NFT could do several things, but in our case, it works as a certificate of authenticity and as well as a proof of ownership. So every time you buy a really nice luxury product, or even like a car, you're obviously going to get some sort of piece of paper or something that says, here is the legitimate owner. This legitimate owner is this person, and this product was manufactured by this legitimate manufacturer. So that piece of paper legitimizes the production of that product, the authenticity of the product, as well as how well it was made, making sure that no human lives were affected negatively during the production of that product, and then making sure that that owner is legitimate owner. So that happens everything from cars down to like a Rolex. Even in a Rolex, you're going to get a little piece of paper, a card, or something that says this was ethically made, and you are the legitimate owner of this product. So we basically digitized that and built it into the physical product itself. So we use NFC chips. So NFC chips is the same thing you're going to see inside your credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you do like contactless payment or anything like that, you're using NFC technology that will read data off of that chip and then enact a purchase. In this case, you can actually scan any physical product and then recognize that that physical product is a legitimate product, and who actually physically owns that product. So by doing that, you make it really, really difficult for counterfeit production or counterfeit producers of any sort to be able to clone that kind of technology and embed it in there, because the tech is so high end that it's very, very difficult to copy and then put into NFC chips and put into their own counterfeit products. So, and we also do it in a very cost efficient manner. So I'm not just talking about like Rolexes or cars or anything like that. I'm talking about like a Gucci hat could even very well have an NFC chip in it, and you could scan it just to say, oh yeah, that's a legitimate product, I'll buy it. But then you try scanning it and something else comes up, or nothing at all. Then you're like, okay, this is counterfeit product. If I buy this, I could be, endorsing some sort of illicit business. So I don't want to buy this product. And that's pretty much what our business revolves around.
Super cool. So one, I want to point out to everyone listening right now, we've been, listening to Patrick talk about NFTs and NFCs for the last couple of minutes here. And not once have we talked about JPEGs or pictures of apes on the internet. Okay. So
Yeah.
I bring that up because I think too, the like, if all you've seen is just like the term NFT somewhere, you might just think all it is, like the only use case out there are just like buying pictures of, apes on the internet. Right. And this is like a very practical real world example of the utility of this technology that isn't that. Right. And you can apply this to whether it be physical goods or concert tickets, or there's a lot of other things you can think about that aren't necessarily like buying a work of art, which has just become like the branding issue for NFTs. So I'm really glad to have you on the show, if nothing else, to like point that out to people that there are different use cases here and the value proposition can be very different talking about. Something I'm super curious about that you can probably help me talk through is So I understand like the basic idea of a of smart contract. Okay, in a lot of ways, it's just like an automation of a transaction, right? So let's say, I'm buying a house and the money's in escrow, and they're waiting on a couple of documents, and as soon as I upload those documents, then the money leaves escrow. Okay, like that could be a way a smart contract could be written.
Yes.
I'm still curious a little bit about the like origination challenge for NFT on a physical product. Like, could someone still, um, a nefarious actor still kind of counterfeit the NFT on the Gucci hat, if you will?
Yeah. So this is a really, really good question. So imagine every time a contract is created, you have to have a creator of that contract. Okay. So if, let's say, for, I'll go back to, like Gucci. Gucci is probably, if and when they really heavily jump into the NFT world, they have lightly. They're going to have a specific wallet address that is the originator of that contract, and that wallet address is also legitimized by several different domain sources and things like that to make sure that they are the legitimate owner of that address. And because they're the legitimate owner of that address, that contract is enacted, and you can see the source of it. So if another contract is started with the kind of the same thing, they're trying to just copy paste somebody else's JPEG or something like that, you can look at the original address and see, okay, that is not somebody that is legitimate. There's a lot of other ways to legitimize different NFTs and things like that. Like most of the marketplaces, let's say like OpenSea or Looks Rare, things like that, they have like a verification process, just like a lot of social media does, where I can contact the marketplace and say, hey, we're going to list our contracts or NFTs on your marketplace, but we need to make sure that we're properly verified so that nobody can counterfeit our product. And it's actually not too heavy of a process. You're going to send in documents legitimizing your business or you as an entity, and just like you would with any other social media platform or anything like that. So it kind of works the same way. So it's kind of, there's several different layers of verification to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, so I mean the last one you talked about, think of it as like a blue check verification on Twitter or Instagram, if you
Yeah, pretty
will,
much.
right?
It looks
Okay.
looks almost identical on OpenSea. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the previous one, so I'm like envisioning a world where I don't know, Gucci's just getting all kinds of free advertisement on my show today.
I know.
But I'm envision a world where Gucci, Rolls Royce, Rolex, whatever, puts
Yeah.
out, it says like, this is our wallet address. And like when you are verifying the NFTs from our product, you need to ensure that like it's this address and it's another address, then it's counterfeit. And so
Hmm.
like that's just kind of right.
Yeah, they do make it pretty easy now too. So let's say, of course, these wallet addresses are mostly like 27 plus characters, I think, and I can't
Right.
remember exactly the character count, but super long characters, and they're totally randomized. And you're like, how do I recognize that off the top of my head? You can actually buy like an NFT domain, and so in my case, I have an NFT domain that's literally patrickskinner.eth. ETH,
Mm-hmm.
and that I can use as a representation of my wallet address. So every time that I mint a contract of any sort, any kind of smart contract, I'm going to do it under patrickskinner.e so they can legitimately see, okay, this is Patrick Skinner's contract. Nobody else legitimately owns that domain. It's Patrick. And so Gucci, Rolex, actually surprisingly, Puma they talk about their address quite a bit. They even changed their Twitter handle to puma.eth, and so like that's a good way to make sure that you're legitimizing anything you do on blockchain technology.
And fascinating. Okay, perfect. No, that was you directly addressed like the concerns I had, because I'd always kind of been wondering that, in particular about like physical products. Like, what's to stop one from someone from just kind of making it up? But when you kind of think back to the origin source and everything, and that's the whole idea of the distributed ledger, is that you can like it's all open out there, and you can see what wallets are doing what and everything. So perfect, great
Yeah,
overview. Thank you. Yeah.
that's yeah. And to be perfectly honest, Web3 world still has a way to go. I
Right.
mean, there's still a lot of things that they have to fix. There's still a lot of people's wallets getting hacked into and things like that. And now, is there all the security parameters if you do it right? Are the security parameters there? Yes. Is it very new user friendly? Not so much, but we're very close to being there. And so to answer the unanswered question is like, is this something that somebody really wants to get into like right now? It just depends on what you want to do. For me, I've never been that crypto bro. Like I want to hold X amount of ETH and X amount of Bitcoin, and it's my investment. No, because at the end of the day, you're going to start seeing over the next 2-3 years that it's just another currency. Whereas this past year and the 10 years before that, all these cryptocurrencies and stuff, you buy it, you hold it, and you sell it just like a stock, but it's extremely volatile, it's risky, things like that. But in today, literally today as we are speaking, and in the near future, you're literally going to be holding cryptocurrency just like you would US dollars in your bank account. And yeah, I mean, we've seen it. Obviously, there is inflation. The U.S. dollar does change in value, and of course, cryptocurrencies change in value a little bit more. But you're gonna see a lot more of people focusing transactionally as to what you could do with the currency, more so than I buy it as an investment and try to become some sort of Bitcoin millionaire.
Right.
I think
Right.
I think those days are pretty much gone. And so yeah, it's an interesting case. So if you get into it, I definitely, in my personal view, I tell people don't get into cryptocurrency as an investment. Get into cryptocurrency because you want to do something with it, and you want to be an early adopter on that industry.
Yeah, yeah, I some great advice there. So for everyone listening, if any of this conversation is sparking a chord with you, I recorded 2 episodes. So one with Johnny DeMedina. He's a former, or excuse me, he's a current PSYOP reserve officer, or NCO, and he has his own Bitcoin investment and brokerage firms. Basically, like when high net worth individuals or funds want to buy, Bitcoin at bulk, they go through Johnny, or at least some of them do. And then another great one I did was former Marine Chris Perkins. So he's the president of Coin Fund, which is a investment firm for Web3 crypto projects. And he helped co-found, along with one of my very good friends from Darden, organization called Veterans in Digital Assets. It's just a community nonprofit group for people interested in this space, specifically veterans and military spouses. And they've got a very active Discord too. So definitely you want to check that out. Okay, cool. So we were talking right before this about, you are currently in the process for applying to Y Combinator. Can you, for
Yeah,
those of you who maybe don't know, can you tell everyone like what Y Combinator is first?
yeah. So Y Combinator is a lot of people say it's a accelerator. I would say it's almost like the accelerator for a lot of the
Oh
tech
yeah,
startups in the
yeah,
world. Yeah. So like you can probably name off a couple of really big tech startups, and they probably have been through Y Combinator. So we could talk about DoorDash, Stripe, GitLab, like some of the
yeah.
biggest
Pretty sure
companies out there.
Airbnb, Coinbase,
Airbnb, Coinbase. Yeah,
yeah.
Coinbase
So
is a great
some
one for this. Yeah,
heavy hitters. Okay, yeah,
massive hitters. They've churned out some lots of multi-billion-dollar companies out of their accelerator program. So what an accelerator does is basically they it's kind of changed on this aspect, but they'll take somebody with a solid business idea, and based on their credentials and things like that, they'll take them in, and they will help them gain the tools, knowledge, and kind of like almost like a roadmap as to what they need to do in the next month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And you're going to go to their physical location most of the time. So they're located in Mountain View, California, and they're going to basically give you the crash course of what you need to do to turn your business into a multi-million or even billion-dollar business. And at the end of it, they will fund your. This works differently on different accelerators, but some will get funded, some won't. Some will get more funding than others. And typically with Y Combinator, they just had their last day to announce who was getting the most funding, and I believe they had 10 businesses in this. I think it was literally announced yesterday, September 8th, that they had 10 businesses each get $500,000 in funding from Y Combinator. So most accelerators are also VC backed, they're venture capital backed. And so it kind of gives the venture capitalists front row seats to seeing what these people are doing, what they're ideating on, what they're creating, what their potential is, and then deciding, okay, I'm going to pick this person in the lot to invest into, and that happens a lot. So that's what Y Combinator does. There's a lot of other accelerators out there. Not all of them are even tech space related. Some of them there are even agriculture related accelerators. There are Bunker Labs has their accelerator, which is a military-based accelerator program as well. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of different types of accelerators. Now, Y Combinator is just it's considered like the holy grail of tech accelerators. You will see people that have gone through Y Combinator. They list it on their like headline of their LinkedIn pages and stuff, like 2022 alumni or whatever. Because to be perfectly honest, the fact that you even got into Y Combinator is like it's almost. I would almost parallel that with being like I was a Harvard alumni or something like that. People pulled a lot of stock and weight to YC alumni.
Totally agree. And I think, so I think, we're recording this on September 9th, and I think they just wrapped up their most recent demo day, which is like the culmination of the Y Combinator experience where, they've been working with a group of entrepreneurs for the last couple of months. And this is, putting them in front of a bunch of venture capitalists and investors, and they're in Mountain View, California. So these are, probably people from some of the biggest firms and the biggest funds in the world. And demo day is often kind of seen as like a glimpse of the horizon of the future, if you will, of like, okay, we're kind of getting like this amalgamation of a bunch of really smart people working on really complex stuff. And you'll probably see some themes of like, so I'm sure, there's probably a couple of, I'm sure there's at least a number of projects in like Web3, you're doing something NFT based, right? And that's like the signal to like the rest of the industry and tech world, like, okay, this is where YC people are starting to go. That's kind of where like the rest of the world is going to be pushing in the next couple of years as well, because of like these people are on that forefront. That's like the general signal that kind of gets put out to the crowd and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So could you kind of talk through like what you said you're currently in the interview application process. Can you kind of talk through like what the process has been like to go through it thus far?
Yeah. So first, YC has a free program kind of thing that's called Startup School. And Startup School was really interesting because they had all kinds of people that had graduated and gone through or were funded by YC. So a lot of YC alumni come and they do live videos about what their business was like before YC, what it became, during YC, what was some of the process. And there was always some sort of centralized theme as to what they were talking about. And then, what were the takeaways of their talk and so on. So, I mean, I learned a ton from Startup School because, to be perfectly honest, as much programming education I've had online and even my experience with DealerFX and their tech startup, I'm still lacking as far as experience when it comes to the biz dev side of, early stage startups. And so I learned a lot in that case. And I also think that Startup School is a little bit of a way to kind of start the beginning of the weeding out process. How many people actually started, how many actually finish Startup School, and then after that, how many people actually apply after attending Startup School. So I went through the whole process, applied, and we were quickly getting some really good feedback from people on throughout our process. Now, I will say that most, including YC, most of them have gone away from saying, "Hey, this is a really good business idea," and more leaning about you and what your mission is and why you are driven to this. Because you could have a great idea, but if you're really not truly married to that idea, it's pretty easy to just kind of get burned out on an idea and just say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or you just you just don't have the passion for it. So your passion kind of dies away, and you're not putting in 110% like you did in the beginning. So
Right.
they start more so leaning into who you are, how you got to where you are today, and then why you will be that perfect fit for that idea. Because I mean, I'm sure they hear tons of really, really good ideas every single day, but there are lots of times where they hear a really good idea, but they don't think that that person that has that idea is the perfect person to execute that idea. And so the feedback that I've gotten so far is a lot because of the experience that I had with human trafficking and a lot of the ways that I have kind of circumnavigated my own ability to just kind of figure things out and say, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. They really love that. And so anybody that says, and it's just honest, it's like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question, but give me 24 hours and I will. They love that answer rather than even hearing, maybe even a good answer, because
Right.
to them that's a great answer. That says more of like, you may not always have the answers, but when the right question is asked to you, you will figure it out, and that's the things that they really look for.
Yeah, I mean, they're very much looking for. I mean, what it sounds to me like what they're looking for. You're not gonna have everything figured out as an entrepreneur, especially early
Mm-hmm.
on. Like you're just not. There's gonna be there's gonna be an HR problem that comes to be like, shit, I haven't dealt with this one before, or like a VC is gonna ask you, well, what about this? I don't know, man. Or a gazillion different things are going to come your way, and you're just not always going to know what to do. But you have to be able to figure it out. And so they've seen probably hundreds of companies come through thus far, and like they just see like that is a very important skill of we want people who just can figure things out. We don't necessarily need someone that's going to have all the answers. We know they're not going to have all the answers. Like they're just not. That's not going to happen. But when they hit that block, what are they going to do? Are they going to throw up their arms? Are they going to bullshit an answer? Or are they just going to try and figure it out? Because like that's what's going to make a good entrepreneur and a good business take off.
Yeah, there's a great book too that is heavily endorsed by Y Combinator, and it's called Super Founder. And Super Founder is a great book. It's written by Ali Tamasib. Ali Tamasib, he's a former VC guy that really kind of took towards the data of understanding who could be the perfect founder. And one of the things that I learned is the fact that I've actually started businesses, have failed, like not exited and was profitable, but have just royally failed at businesses. They were like, hey, that's a good check mark. And I'm like, that's why is that a good check mark? And they're like, well, you tried something, you failed it, and then you tried something else, and then it got much farther down the line the next time. And I was like, oh, that's a good thing. Okay, cool. In that case, I've done that lots of times. Let's talk about that.
I want to do that right now. I could talk about this all day. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, this is a topic I typically try to avoid. But
yeah.
if you like this, I've got a novel worth. And so and but yeah, they really look for that. They genuinely say, hey, tell us about this business. Tell us why you started it. And the one thing they do want to correlate is you're not just starting businesses just to say, I've been a startup founder. You've started business because you were genuinely either trying to solve a problem that you had or somebody else had. And you had some sort of origin story to understand why you were the right person for that. It doesn't matter if you completely just closed down the business or you did a $10 million+ exit. They want that kind of stuff. And so and that doesn't just go for Y Combinator. That goes for pretty much any and every accelerator program out there.
Yeah. There's a concept, especially in early stage companies, called product market fit. Okay. And it's just, do you have you have a solution to an inefficiency or a problem in the market? Okay. Investors often too are then looking for founder market fit. Like, do we have the right person who has the right origin story, the right experience, the right desire to address the problem that they identified in the market to bring this thing to fruition? Okay. And if it's, if they start getting the whiff too much of, oh, this is just some, former investment banker type who just saw an opportunity and said, hey, I can make a quick buck on it, that may last them for a year or two, but it's not going to take them through like multiple rounds of funding and all the gazillion problems that are going to happen and everything. Like they want to see someone who's got the drive and desire and grit and connection to whatever it is they're trying to solve. And so like that's a very popular thing to be kind of talked about for investors and around early stage companies, both the product market fit, but then also founder market fit.
Yeah, that's very true. Because one of the things that they actually said to me was very much of we want to make sure that we have somebody that, regardless of whether this product is good for the market at this moment, just talking about like market opportunity, or in 6 months it's not a sexy topic anymore. If you're still passionate about it or not, and or you just going to get squirrely and look for the next thing, and that's what they don't want. They want to make sure that you're somebody that's like, I'm genuinely here to solve this problem, and I have a story as to why I'm passionate about solving this problem.
Right. Right. Well, Patrick, we're winding down to the last few minutes, and I think I feel like we've only like scratched the surface and everything I wanted to talk about with you, man. But I want to be respectful of your time. So in a minute, I'm going to pass it back over to you, just providing parting shots, last words of wisdom to the crowd, if you will. But before we do, I have a question I always like to ask my guests, and that's: if you think back to your time in the Army, what was the best and or worst chow hall you ever ate at?
Oh God. Okay, so best chow hall I ever had was 3rd Battalion Ranger Regiment, Ranger Chow Hall. Man, that was the best chow hall on earth, hands
The
down.
the
For Benning,
the chow
best one.
halls from the 75th have come up multiple times as just
Yes.
wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, man. I that's that still to this day. That's still my favorite chow hall.
yeah,
To be perfectly honest, like I've eaten at good restaurants and been like, man, 75th got it better. Like, I'm like, it's true
yeah.
though. And then the worst chow hall is, well, I don't want to count a deployment, but yeah, definitely in Haiti was probably one of the worst things, when they had their little pop-up chow hall.
Right,
That
right.
that, that was
Yeah.
probably one of the worst. I think because my experience was I got malaria, and
Oh, geez, man.
the day I got malaria was the day that they popped up this chow hall, and I remember trying to eat, and they had the thing, like the really loose gravy and biscuits.
Oh, yeah, of
uh,
course.
yeah, I tried to eat that, and to this day, I think it was just because I was a combination of like really sick and eating that. I can't even smell that stuff anymore,
Uh,
like I will refuse to eat that till the day I die. So yeah, that was probably my worst chow hall experience.
well, I'm sorry, man. Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. Well, Patrick, this has been an awesome conversation, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Lots of good stuff in here for everybody. From talking about um, kind of like all the definitions around the world of coding. I think some, if you're interested in product management at some point, some very good tidbits early in this conversation. Uh, really good story you have about like how you got into your company and everything now. And there's some really good stuff too for those of you who didn't know about Y Combinator and everything. And even if you're working on something and Y Combinator is maybe not necessarily in your trajectory, startup school, you can still go there. And I think like the principles and what the investors and the admissions committee, or I don't know what they call them at YC, are
Mhm.
looking for, good things to think about in any type of like business foundation. Okay. So just want to pass it back over to you for any last thoughts, parting shots, words of wisdom to the crowd, man.
Yeah, at this point, for me, I tell people, if you're somebody that is looking for funding, if you're looking for accelerator programs, anything like that, I definitely say just aggregate a list as long as humanly possible, apply to every single one of them. Every time you get to turn down, ask for feedback, and just hone your skills, because you'll be surprised how much you learn as to why you need a cap table, why you need a 3-year P&L summary, why you need a go-to-market strategy and stuff like that. Just in that process alone, you'll learn more about the first year of what your business should look like than actually like running the business, because when you see those people and you talk to those people and you see, okay, this is what they're expecting, and you learn through that process, that's amazing. So I always say accelerator and grant first, apply for every single grant and every accelerator program that fits your needs, and then collect as much funding from those points as possible, and then continue to grow. Once you've gotten past your pre-seed phase and stuff like that, you could look at VCs and stuff like that, just depending on how big your business is and how much funding you need.
Right. And great advice there for everyone. I'll add, just because I've gotten the question a bunch of times from people about grants specifically for veterans. I'll be honest, I have found very few out there. There are a couple. Occasionally there'll be a pinch competition that comes along the way. There might be 20 grand up for grabs or something like that, but there's not some magical pot of grant money through the SBA or the VA for veterans to just start businesses. Okay, that doesn't exist. It's through private. It's through companies that have some type of like pitch competition. That's usually how it is for veterans. Now that being said, widen your door to any other types of grants. Okay. There are usually some type of like entrepreneurship group organization in like your local city, and they might have some type of accelerator program where you can get, 10, 20K or something just to like, kickstart it and get going. So don't just like narrow your focus to, I've got to find veteran money. There's lots of other money out there for those early stage grants and everything.
Yeah. I tell people start as local as humanly possible,
Yeah.
down to like the city, then go county, then go state, and then go federal, and just go up in that way. The other part is every time you can get a local politician to back you, call all your local politicians in your area. Say, hey, I'm going for this grant. What grants do you currently have available? And they tell you what grants. They're actually legally obligated to tell you what grants are currently available for your specific sector, and then say, hey, this is what I have. I need endorsement. Would you like to endorse me? And whatever endorsements you can get from a local politician will almost always get you at least in the top 10 choices for when you get to the point where you're going from local to county to state. That's once you've scaled that and you have that local politician support, then you're definitely going to be able to have the right conversations for grant money.
Dude, that is brilliant. I've never heard
Mm-hmm.
anyone suggest that, but I freaking love that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Write that down, everyone. If nothing else, if you got nothing else out of this episode, write down that technique because that's fantastic right there, man. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. If people want to learn more about, what you're working on, where can they go?
Yeah. So for our current company website, it's Agami Co. That's AGAMICO. And agamico.com. And that's our company website. You can actually see our proof of concept products and stuff like that on there. We have a line of watches with our technology built into them. And and you feel free to contact us there. I'm the one that receives the direct contact, so I'll be more than happy to discuss anything with anybody there.
Well, awesome, man. Again, appreciate your time. Enjoy your weekend. And for everyone still listening, so one, appreciate you coming on the show. And this is just my ask to you. If you have liked listening to the show, please go and leave a review. It's super impactful. I love seeing your all's feedback. And it's also really helpful for the show to help it grow. So take a minute today, go on to Spotify does not have a great review system, but Apple iTunes definitely does. Go in there, leave me a review. I'd really appreciate it. And if you do, send me a message or something, I'd love to thank you or buy you a beer if you ever come through Charlottesville or whatever. But Patrick, appreciate your time, man. Enjoy the weekend. All right.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.